Good morning, everybody. I'm Karama, aka The Blurred Girl, and I am also a contributing editor to SYFY Wire. Welcome to our little discussion about Black Panther. Seated on the stage with me is Afua Richardson, comic book artist and musician. Some of the ones that are my favorites: Top Cow's Genius, All-Star Batman for DC Comics, Attack on Titan for Kodansha, Mad Max for Vertigo, I know, right? Cover art for X-Men, Totally Awesome Hulk, Captain America and the Mighty Avengers, Captain Marvel, and of course, Marvel's World of Wakanda series, which was written by Roxane Gay. Next to, yes, absolutely. Next to her is Ken Lashley. Now, I'm sorry, Ken Lashley's not here. Next to her is Daniel Kibblesmith. Sorry, yeah, Ken looks a little different today, doesn't he? Ken is not going to be able to join us. That's what I was supposed to be saying. Next to her is Daniel Kibblesmith, the Emmy-nominated writer for The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Quantum and Woody, which is one of my funny, I really, really love it. And we're gonna talk about why their dad is still a goat later. Unity for Valiant as well. The Doorman for Heavy Metal. I didn't realize you had written for Heavy Metal until we were doing this. And then the Harley Quinn for DC. And very recently you did Black Panther versus Deadpool, which is absolutely hysterical. So what we're gonna talk about a little bit is, I don't think when Don McGregor back in the 70s first wrote Black Panther, when he showed up in Fantastic Four, or when he did Jungle Action or any of that, that he could have seen where we are now with this character. I don't think anybody could have predicted that.
It was great. I actually got to be on a panel with him and a couple of other writers, and it was really interesting just sort of seeing the hands that passed through Black Panther. And he actually got a lot of resistance for some of his ideas. He kind of wanted to make Black Panther like Marvel's Batman, kind of just a little ruthless, you know, and people are like, oh, that's never gonna go anywhere. It's not that.
Yeah, no one wants to see, no one wants to see that. And then when he did Panther's Rage, Black Panther, T'Challa looked good, but Man-Ape was problematic.
Very. No,
I'm serious. Like when they said, "Yay, Man-Ape is going to be in the Black Panther movie," I'm like, "Really? Do we want this?"
Is this?
But then,
right? It would be amazing.
They turned that around.
That's what I'm saying.
So
I mean,
tasteful.
Exactly. And M'Baku was amazing in the movie.
Woo, an incredible character.
Yeah.
I just have to say, it was really amazing being a part of this process, and then seeing it turn into film, and then watching it become everyone else's new favorite. Like people who weren't necessarily fans before.
Exactly.
Didn't have, they had trouble connecting with the character. Like all of a sudden now, you see people from all walks of life, like throwing up there.
Yeah, Wakanda salute.
Wakandan pride.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah.
this is amazing. This is exactly what I hoped. And as a matter of fact, some of the implications outside of the film and just being a super fan about Black Panther is the effects of industry.
Yes.
So I buy a lot of sparkly things that...
Yeah, your jewelry's always on point. We're going to have a conversation about that bracelet. The one on your left arm you are not leaving here with. I'm just letting you know that. No witnesses, none at all.
I've been going on Etsy.com, which is a really great international marketplace, and I've been connecting with some South African jewelry makers, and they said that their businesses have completely changed because of Black Panther. Some people can now send their daughters to school, others now they can do this full time.
The people who and that made the Basotho blankets,
right,
that I feel the Border Tribe was wearing. Those are actual real blankets. There's like a whole new industry now.
Right. Right.
So it's been far-reaching, which is really interesting.
Well, and Oscar winning as well.
That helps.
Taking home the Oscar for costuming. It doesn't get, you don't get mainstream exposure bigger than an Academy Awards.
And I got a chance to talk to Hannah Beekler, who was the production designer, and she had created this really specific production Bible for all of Black Panther that was fascinating. That in terms of regions and colors and styles, it was between her and Ruth Carter was amazing. But just rewinding a little bit, when I first got into Black Panther, it was really more of, honestly, it was 90s, early 2000s. It's not like I didn't know who the character was, but when I remember Ann Nesenti, when she wrote it, she introduced Ramonda, I'm probably saying it wrong, and then my favorite was when Reginald Hudlin introduced Shuri, and then Black Panther actually got taken out, and Shuri was Black Panther for a minute in the comics, which is what I really hope for Black Panther 2. Like, who else wants to see Shuri as Black Panther? Woo! I'm not the only one. So yeah, so it was because I was starting to see a storyline here I hadn't seen before, and then Christopher Priest run, when he married Storm, hello. Yeah, it was this iconic run that it seemed like almost like a quilt.
Yeah.
And everybody was adding another patch to it. And then when Ta-Nehisi Coates took it on, it was like almost like a rebirth, but he did have little moments where he reached back. Yeah. When you two were working on this comic, did your separate comics, were you given sort of like, this is the playground, this is the fence, and do whatever you want, or was it very specific?
I think mine was pretty open, because there have been a lot of these like Deadpool versus books, and they don't really like impact like the mainstream continuity or anything. But I knew that these characters had such a big year that most of the people who picked this up would be coming to the characters from the movies, probably. So I just tried to use everybody that I loved from the Black Panther movie, and most of the series is set in Wakanda, except the last issue, which is in Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. Like when the whole mound of vibranium somehow ends up on Route 17 in Paramus.
That's right.
And I was mad because I grew up in Jersey, and I'm like, how do you know this? How? Why is this off of
No,
exit 110?
I'm from around here, but I thought New Jersey was the funniest place to teleport the whole. If you haven't read, it's a little spoiler, but Deadpool steals the mountain of vibranium.
But accidentally.
Accidentally. And Black Panther is very mad. But
and Shuri is extremely confused.
yeah, she's like, how did this happen? I'm the smartest person in the world, and I have no idea how the stupidest person in the world.
Basically, accidentally managed to move an entire mountain. Okay, yeah, but that's what I was gonna say. Like, did they give you rules like, you can't, but then it's funny, I said that, like, they must have given very specific rules because they're staying in Wakanda. And then when they ended up in New Jersey, and I'm like, or not.
Yeah, or out the window. They didn't give me rules, but I think we had kind of an understanding about, so I loved Coates' run, and he gets name dropped in issue 4.
He does. So does, it's funny, he named, it was the first time I've seen Black Panther break the fourth wall.
Yeah, and it's kind of like dubious whether he breaks the fourth wall or if in Marvel continuity, Black Panther really is friends with Ta-Nehisi Coates. So like, I like to believe that in that universe, they are actually friends.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. It's in the 3rd issue, I think?
Yeah, I think it's in number 3.
And yeah, they're having Deadpool's having a conversation with T'Challa, and he was like, yeah, this is kind of like Ta-Nehisi Coates' run. He's like, yeah, I talk to him all the time. And it was like, so these little moments, and I think it's great how everybody gets to make part of it their own. It's also very interesting when you talk to older artists who worked on it before, like Christopher Priest, who felt that no one was gonna pick up a book about a story about a black man and a black superhero. So he told the story of Black Panther through Agent Ross during his run, because he felt Agent Ross was gonna be more palatable. And it's so, he's shocked because like now you wouldn't do that now.
Right.
And it's not like this is like 1956. This is like less than 20 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Which is fascinating. Let's talk a little bit about where we are now. Like since the movie dropped, I feel the movie, Ryan Coogler, even though he says he pulled a little bit from everybody, the look feels a lot like Ta-Nehisi Coates' run.
Definitely.
It feels like Brian Stelfreeze in casting.
Like you can see Laura Martin's colors in the dream sequences. I was like, that's Laura's blue.
Exactly.
Like absolutely. She's one of the best colorists in the industry.
And didn't she work with you on World of Wakanda?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Well, I mean, I looked at her palettes because Brian Stelfreeze trusts Laura to do the colors that he would. He's like, I'm just going to lay this here and you will do your magic because you live in my mind. And
Laura is one of the most underrated colorists. Oh, Laura Martin has been doing coloring for years, and she's incredible. Yeah.
She's just such a beautiful, like, understanding of colors and the marriage of their two, like, the aesthetic, like the sharp angles of Brian Stelfreeze definitely showed up. And I got to speak to one of the members of the CG team who developed his suit, like the new suit. And they said that, you know, they had, of course, his work open, John Romita Jr., mine as well, for the covers that I did for World of Wakanda, which was amazing. Like, in my head, I was screaming like a child. I was like, yes, this is so amazing. Okay, calm, calm. All right.
But your inner geek girl was like, I'm amazing.
And it was great. When I first started working on the covers, it was just supposed to be a variant for Ta-Nehisi's run. And a couple of months went by and they didn't use it. And they said, well, we're not going to use this for a variant. I was like, oh. It's like, we're actually going to use it for a whole nother series. Would you like to do 5 more? And I'm like, the emotional roller coaster that I'm having.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right?
Like, I'm okay. Wait, what?
Please tell that story in the right order.
Right?
Yeah.
You know.
You just way to bury the lead. You know?
So it was a lot of fun because in the first cover, what I decided to do was take a piece of myself and pour it into this. Because it's like, okay, wait, we have Brian Stelter. He's one of the most, you know, incredible artists in the comic book industry and one of my like personal mentors. Like he was like when I was very shy and geeky and holding onto my sketchbook and not really sure if I wanted to do this for a living or I could do it for a living, he was just like, oh no, Afua, you're great. You try this out.
And he's incredible. Like, I've seen him at cons, and I've seen other nervous people, like, when you look at my stuff, and Brian's like, sure. He's so giving to artists and stuff.
He
like,
is the Yoda of comics.
He loves doing artist alleys, because he just wants to look at people's art. He doesn't care if it's on your
natural
iPhone.
teacher.
He doesn't care.
Yeah, he is a natural teacher. And he taught me quite a bit, so it was like quite an honor to do this for one of his books. I'm like, okay, I've got to bring everything I've got. I've got to do some art push-ups for this. So what I decided to do was embed little Easter eggs. And my name, Afua, is a Ghanaian name. It's from West Africa, and it means a girl born on Friday. And in West Africa, in Ghana, they have something called the Adinkra symbols, which I think were the basis of the language.
They were. They used to be
Wakanda.
printed on, they still are. It's a printed language, actually, on... Yes. They don't wear blankets, but it's on their fabric, and it's an actual language that was used. Yes. So yeah, you snuck some Adinkra symbols in there.
And so I have one on my wrist, and it's actually made by a King Kofi, which is a boy born on Friday. So another fellow Friday created these symbols, and they're usually used as a. Now they're a little more commercial, but they were used as a marker of important events. They represent philosophies. So the one I have on my wrist is in Kim Kim, and it looks like a little square snake with legs, and it's maneuverability. Whatever comes, you deal with it. So if I'm freaking out, just look at my wrist, look, it's gonna be okay, I'm gonna make it. You know, and so I decided to take those things that were, you know, a piece of me and place them in the book. So behind T'Challa, I have Nea Ope Se Obedehene, he who wants to be king must first learn to serve, which I thought was incredibly potent for what it is that he has to do within Wakanda. He's gone away and he left Shuri and she's sort of in stasis. And now he has to come back to an angry people and he has to serve their needs.
Right, because in the meantime, Wakanda got kind of tore up while he was gone. And his film, I think that's the thing I liked about both Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, Roxanne's, as well as Nnedi Okorafor's. It's really about the people of Wakanda, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not just, hey, I'm king. Because honestly, Ta-Nehisi's run, T'Challa's like, I'm not sure if I want to be king. I'm not sure if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, he's got some Hamlet stuff going on, and you really see it played. And there's like a lot of palace drama, and like the point of views change. And I read it one issue at a time, but going back and reading it like a novel and seeing where it was going the whole time, yeah, I could not be a bigger fan. It was such a
Was
huge
it daunting
influence.
to you when they were like, because you got your book after the movie came out?
Yeah,
So was it daunting when they're like, okay, so next you're going to do Black Panther?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was. It's like, oh yeah, people like these guys. I better not screw this up. But no, it was just such a huge opportunity, and I think that they are characters that I would be most comfortable writing in the context of each other, you know, because it's a comedy book and you've got this kind of like classic like straight man, crazy person dynamic, and I really liked the way that they pulled vulnerabilities out of each other. And for me, that's what that story is about, is Black Panther is the embodiment of responsibility. and he's confronted with somebody who doesn't have a responsible bone in their body. So it was really fun.
Honestly, after your book, I'm not quite sure if Wade has any bones in his body.
They'll grow back. They'll grow back. But yeah, it was very daunting, and I wanted the fans, and I'm such a big fan of both characters. I wanted everybody to read it to say like, yeah, that's those guys. If you put them in a room together, that is exactly how they would behave.
And I agree. And it's funny because I could see Ryan Reynolds kind of in your book along with Chadwick Boseman. I think the other thing also about World of Wakanda that was interesting was yours was focused on, well, Io and Anika, Io was in the movie, Anika was not.
Right.
But still, the concept of the women, the Dora Milaje, and their commitment to the people, I think that got translated from your comic into the film, because I'd never seen so many strong Black women with agency in the story. And it was funny because I was nervous about the Dora Milaje too, because when Christopher Priest had written them, I think Aletha Martinez had drawn them. And the first time I brought it up to her, she was like, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "Why are you apologizing?" And she was like, "Well, because they had like really short skirts and they were supposed to be really sexy." And she said, at that point, I don't think I had the voice I have now, the confidence to say, "Can we make them a little more,
Yeah, practical.
Exactly. And I was so happy that that practicality was seen the way in the books that you were working on, as well as in the film. How happy were you to see the Dora in the film?
Oh my God, I wanted those costumes to wear to the grocery store. Okay, like I started just collecting pieces over time. Like since I started working on the book, I just started like collecting little Dora Milaje like pieces just to wear around. People were like, where are you going? I was like, I'm going to buy some milk. I just for the people, for my cats.
Right. For my king. For my Black Panther.
And it just, the media that I ingest infects me in a very personal way. Like when I was a little kid and I watched Thundercats, I joined the track team because of Chitara. So
there you go.
The projects that I take on, especially when I invest a lot into them, like it sort of imprints back on me as well.
But it is, and that's, I think, the power of this particular character. All of a sudden, everybody was seeing, like, for me, with Thundercats, Panther was mine, because in my mind, Panther was Black. Fight me. So I'm just, because at that time, it was like I wasn't seeing anybody who looked like myself, so I was trying to imprint myself on these characters. And I think that's what representation means. And I've said so many times that had I seen Shuri when I was 14, I wouldn't be on the stage. I'd be at CERN. I'd be at NASA. There's like literally nothing you could have told me that I couldn't do.
Right. My older sister, Nataki, just got her PhD from Johns Hopkins, and she did the Wakanda salute on
That's awesome.
stage, and she's worked for NASA and Lockheed and Boeing, and like I'm like, my sister's a real life Shuri, guys.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I'm so proud of her, and it's like just seeing it just reverberate outwards. It's just so exciting. It's absolutely exciting.
And I think the thing, and I've told people this before, because a lot of people talk about how much money it's made internationally and everything like that, and they're like, oh, yes, it has been an amazing, incredible movie for African Americans, but this is a movie that has made international money. It wasn't just Black people buying tickets to this movie.
No.
And I say this repeatedly, it is a well-written movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel Logan was a well-written movie, and that's where I feel sad that we can't, a lot of the superhero movies don't get the awards, like for writing,
right?
And for directing that I feel like they should get, because they have, the same undertaking. But the impact around the world, I mean, I think you even said not just Etsy, but other people that you've met,
Yeah.
How about you? Have you seen, when you were saying to people like, I'm working on the Black Panther, comic, I'm working on the Deadpool comic, what were the reactions?
Everybody knows it, and I couldn't have dreamed about it. I mean, Black Panther was my favorite Avenger when he wasn't on the Avengers, because I grew up reading old comics. Like, I grew up reading my dad's comics from the 60s, and he said, oh, here's one where one guy just beats the crap out of the Fantastic Four, and then asks
Yes.
them for a favor.
Yes. One of my favorite runs was it was in the 80s, and I can't remember who wrote it, and it's bothering me. But anybody remember See Wakanda and Die? And it was basically the Skrulls went to Wakanda and didn't make it out. And it was literally Black Panther and Storm like, yeah, you can get this work. And they laid them out. And I was like, this is the Skrull movie I want to see.
I'm really looking forward, geek moment. I'm really looking forward to Storm entering Wakanda.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, will
and Ryan
she
Coogler,
give-
if you're listening, we need this to happen.
Okay, like is
as
she gonna
soon
give
as possible.
Nakia some side eyes? It's like,
Yes.
dude, is there gonna be like? That's what I really loved about Reginald's run. There was a lot of like, sort of the things that he pulled from his films, that kind of tension between characters, and you saw that, like within the relationships of the characters.
And even when Ta-Nehisi brought her back, it was interesting because she could connect with the child because she too had left her home.
Right.
And gone off to a foreign country.
Exactly.
And it didn't matter that people thought she was a goddess. It was like, but you left. You know, while we were fighting, like, really?
Yeah.
That's so comic book love too.
It is.
You know, it's like only we really understand each other because we're both royalty and we both left the throne, and
Exactly.
it's so dramatic.
Right?
We're
good.
brought together by angst.
It's pulling on your feels, pulling on all the feels. When I was speaking to Ta-Nehisi while he was writing, he was sort of coaching Roxane Gay because this was her first, comic, and Brian was coaching him because this was sort of his introduction into the world, and was very collaborative. And I just got to speak to him a little bit via email, and he said, I wasn't a big fan necessarily of Black Panther before. I'd heard of the character, and I thought it was kind of cool, but I didn't know anything about it. And now that I have read all of the things, I love this story in a very unhealthy way. Like, I need to know what happens to them. Like, I am concerned for them. And so he wrote, 3 years of story. And that's why there was,
Wow. So it's a
Black
huge
Panther
amount
and
of
the
world
crew.
building.
Yeah, he's like, I'm digging into the Dogon. I'm digging into all of the cultures. Like, I want to, pull from
And I
real
was sad at how
existing-
short-lived the crew was because I liked the original crew.
Right.
I read the original crew, and there was just something about that whole team up that I really wanted, some longevity for.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about impact in the industry now instead of not just the story.
Sure.
I can't tell you 2 years ago, I remember writing an article about hey, so there are Black women that write comics. You know this, right? And on my blog. And then now it's so funny because I see so many. It's not a lot still.
Right.
But I see so many, and then I see so many people who are like, yes, we're looking for an artist of color. We're looking for a writer of color, because it's almost like Black Panther has made everybody else see. I don't know, the rest of us have been reading comics our whole lives and, watching animation and stuff like that. So what type of changes are you seeing within the industry on your end, between art as well as writing?
Well, I think a lot of the people who were skeptical that it could be successful aren't coming to conventions. I think that we're starting to see a commitment to hiring people and featuring characters prominently that reflect the people who are actually reading and buying things. And, if you just walk the floor, you see the fandoms are so heavily populated by people of color,
Right, but
and young women.
everybody keeps saying that. I've said this before. Oh yeah, the books are looking more diverse, and it's no, they're looking more like Brooklyn. They're looking more like reality.
Yeah, they're catching up with the people who are reading them already.
That's exactly it. I think early comics, they were creating for a demographic, and then it's okay, it was a little smaller, and now it's okay, well, now we're speaking with our dollars. We want to see this, and we want to see it accurately represented, even though it's fictional. And we want to know that our stories are valid and deserve to be, hoisted up and awesome. And not that you necessarily need someone else to validate you, but knowing, pulling from real experiences. We want reality. We want not just diversity, not just okay, we're just going to have somebody who is from a place, from someplace else besides America, and now it's diverse. It's no, complexity of emotion, complexity of thought and emotional maturity. Give me something to chew on. Take me someplace else.
That's what I felt about Miles Morales and Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Because there's Miles Morales, yes, but when he's in that opening scene, if you haven't seen it, you're very late.
It's really good. It's really
sorry, but I'm not gonna spoil it. But in one of those opening scenes, when he's in his house, and first of all, he's an artist. He's flipping back and forth between English and Spanish because his mother's Puerto Rican, and then he does the same thing going down the street and to his school, and I was like, this is every little Boricua boy that I've seen in Brooklyn going down the street, because a lot of kids are bilingual. A lot of kids don't go to public schools, they go to magnet schools and stuff, and it was just that reality that was from one of the writers that stuck that in there because it was his reality.
Exactly.
I think a lot of the representation comes in those little small moments.
Yes.
The Adinkra symbols that you were talking about. Those emotional moments between, the characters. Do you think we're getting better? Do you think a lot of the representation and the stories are getting better? Or, because I hear, a lot of chatter online where it's like, this is just another, ploy for us to just buy a comic. It's just somebody black on the cover, nobody's inside. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think we're talking about it more, which is the first step. But yeah, it's hard to say. You never want anything to be commodified immediately. You don't want to like skip to the commercial part without having the part where people like learn hard lessons and actually change like hiring practices and which stories get priority and which creators get priority. You don't want to like just skip to the ad and the hype machine.
Right.
You want to make sure it's built on a foundation of growth.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will come to me as they are creating their characters and say, hey, I'm a writer and I'm white, but I want to create a diverse cast of characters. How do I do so with not creating a token character and not pandering? And I said, well, that's a very excellent question, because sometimes if you create a character and you're not of that culture, does that mean you can't write about that character? Does that mean that I can't write about a character that isn't exactly Black and Native American? Like, when does it stop? And so what I advise them to do is like, okay, if you don't want a token character, just the throw-in, make more than one.
Yeah, I mean, and I have that argument all the time when people
really good advice,
why are we still talking about Black Panther? And I'm like, because he's the only one that has a movie and has all of like, if we had a Storm movie years ago with Angela Bassett, like we should have had, fight me.
No fights there. No fights.
We wouldn't be having these discussions. Like, if there was more than one character, more than one thing, we wouldn't just be talking about the one thing.
Right.
So yeah, I completely
exactly
agree. And then Christopher Priest said something like you had said. He stopped doing Black Panther completely.
Yeah.
And he came out of comics completely. He said, I'm not coming back until you'll give me a character that doesn't just have to be Black. And he came back to DC. Yeah.
That's right. It's like
Into Deadshot. Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, do your research. Make sure that like whatever it is that you're writing about, that this, that you understand this. And if you don't know, then talk to someone. And if you don't know them directly, start reaching out. It's okay, just do research. Like, write something that you're interested in. Write about someone else, someone different than you, because you're interested in it, not because you want to make
There's this
something
amazing
diverse.
research tool I tell everybody to use. It's called Google, where you can actually look up different people and different things of different nationalities.
Is that expensive?
No, actually, it's free.
Are you kidding?
I'm
That's
totally
amazing.
serious. As long as you have internet, you can kind of go outside and get it for free. But yeah, I know it sounds goofy. We're laughing about it, but
No,
you'd be surprised how
you really can.
No, it's true.
you have these conversations with people. It's like, there's the internet, right?
Right, and knowing what is true, being able to do genuine research, saying, okay, let me know as much as I possibly can, remove the contradictions, and then start ordering, the sequence of my story. Like, why is this important? Who is this person? Like, a lot of times someone will come to me and say, oh, like, well, I have a character that's Black and gay. I'm like, so? That's not a story.
And that's also not a human being. That's
right.
a designation.
Right, exactly.
Like,
What
if you
kind
write
of
a
person
human
are
being,
What will they do in these situations?
Yeah.
Who are they at the end of the situation? Who do they have to become in order to get through this sequence? And so really digging into stories. And like, you know, people are complaining like, oh, well, this character is diverse just for being diverse. And I can understand that. You don't want to be pandered to, like, haha, we've got something for you right here. Like, no, that's not it. It's sometimes they're growing pains when it comes to comics, and it's like people are going to get things wrong. And if that is the case and you think you can do better, you can either get mad or get to work. Get creative. There's an opportunity. That story hasn't been told. Tell it. Or if you don't know how to, learn.
And you,
get started.
and you both have worked for the majors as well as indie. Do you feel indie comic? I feel like indie comics have been doing this for a minute. Do you feel like it's easier to just basically write more realistic stories on the indie side than it is for, and not just big two, I just mean sometimes these characters have such long histories that you kind of have the constraints of those storylines versus indie where it might be like, you know, Genius or something, or it's brand new, or Dorman, you know, where it's brand new.
Yeah, I think that when you're writing characters that people already have a really strong emotional relationship with, you have kind of like a contract with the audience to give them enough of what, you know, they wanted coming in, and then, you know, put your spin on it, and, you know, grow the characters. So I think if you're starting from a blank page, absolutely, because then it can be something that is, you know, autobiographical, like a story that's harder to tell, and I think that the big two have such like a huge character roster that adding to that roster has gotten really good in the past few years. But it's still a slower process than, you know, making a zine with your friends that's just like 100% creator control.
Yeah, and I said this the other day, but I like to compare indie comics and the big two to ships. You know, Marvel and DC are these giant tankers that can travel long distances. They have a lot of longevity. We have legacy characters that are, you know, 80 years old. And let's face it, we all know what Wolverine would do in a bar. We know them. They're our mutual friends. And so creating a story for them is just writing another episode in their life that exists already. But new characters, indie characters, are like speedboats. They can get to the minutia. There's still a need for them both, you know, so speedboats can cover ground that giant ships can't really cover.
You're right.
And it's understandable, you know? Like,
it is. Thank you both so much. This has been an amazing, amazing discussion, right? I really appreciate it. And up next, I know you guys are ready for this, the Clueless cast reunion with Alicia Silverstone, Donald Faison, and Breckin Meyer. Please stay where you are.
Here?
Yeah, can I
we'll
stay
just
up
hide
here?
behind the couches and like occasionally creep up. Like, that's cool, guys. And then, like,
stay where you are, guys. You don't want to miss any of this. Follow us online, syfy.com/cons, #C2E2, and #It's a Fan Thing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.